Judith and Garfield Reeves-Stevens are friends of mine who are terrific writers. They are capable of writing anything and quickly. So I made their acquaintance, and then I made their friendship. And we agreed to write a book. So then we began to do books that became autobiographical. I got divorced, I had death, I had children, and we began to give Kirk some semblance of my life.
It was the period of peak Star Trek, right? The mid-90s. We had written Federation. It was about to come out. And I remember thinking, well, we've written Memory Prime, Prime Directive, Federation. That's it. We've done our love letter to Star Trek. What more could we do? And then you got a call from Pocket. Pocket was asking if we'd be interested in writing Star Trek novels with William Shatner. And when we talked to Kevin Ryan, I said, well, we wouldn't ghostwrite them. And Kevin said, oh, no, your names are on the book. Bill wants to work with you.
Yes.
And we said, sure. And so we went in.
We walked in.
Meet with Mr. Shatner. Call me Bill.
Call me Bill. That was hard to do.
Yeah.
It took us a while.
Yeah.
Took us a while to go to that.
Yeah. And at that first meeting, he had in his mind this sort of arc of Captain Kirk being told, you're an admiral, you're not a starship captain anymore, and Kirk was falling in love with a younger woman, and his friends all told him he was crazy. And what Bill is doing here is he's channeling his own life.
It was a very interesting situation. We're almost going to be a biographer. We could feel that we were coming to him at a particular stage in his life where he was reflective. Mm-hmm. And that was also going to be a stage of life for his character.
Captain Kirk being told he's not going to be in command of the Enterprise anymore. He said what he imagined was, what happens when one day a doctor says to me, you can't ride a horse anymore, Mr. Shatner. Mm-hmm. And because that's Bill's passion. Ashes of Eden was the reality of life, the reality of William Shatner's career. So we wrote Ashes of Eden. Generations came out, and again, peak Star Trek, and Pocket Books called Bill and said, we'd like another novel. And Bill's great line was, how can there be another novel?
He's dead. That's right. But, of course, it's science fiction.
Yes.
Nobody actually dies in science fiction. There's always another way.
So that's what led to the prologue and the epilogue of Ashes of Eden, with Spock standing at the grave. The last scene of something is happening to that grave, and perhaps some stories were never meant to end. And that led to The Return. The Return was a story that we crafted as a movie treatment, and I think we wrote three versions of that. And I know Bill was in contact with Rick Berman at the time, because it was, are we going to do another Next Generation movie? Are we going to get Kirk back in a Next Generation movie? And in the end, I think the smart decision was, let's just go in the movies with Next Generation. But we had a lot of fun with The Return, where Bill gets to take on Picard. The idea of Kirk and Picard facing off is such a huge idea. Why would somebody do that? How could they do that? And so that became the core. Somebody who wanted to go against Picard, that was the reason for bringing back Kirk. How are you going to bring down the greatest living Starfleet captain? Well, you're going to get the greatest Starfleet captain of the past, and you're going to put them head to head. And Borg technology can do anything, really. It's the nanites. They can reconstruct. Tissue breaks down, they can build it back. And Romulans were always a great source of, not official, it's not the Klingon Empire bring back Bill. It is that rogue group within the Romulans.
Always twisted.
And so then it becomes this programmed Manchurian candidate Kirk is going to be set loose. And so the key to the Shatnerverse was Kirk and Picard. We have these two iconic characters. They're headstrong, they're smart, they're equally capable, and they would come into conflict all the time. And that was sort of the fuel for the story.
Completely different personalities, completely different style of command. Yeah. And so they were great foils for each other.
And so by the end of the story, Kirk is renewed and reborn, And Bill is renewed and reborn because he's going to carry on more Star Trek adventures. Ashes of Eden was a one-off, and The Return was a one-off. And then, well, we can do a sequel for that. So we got Avenger. And then it was Spectre. The idea of bringing Tiberius in, that was something that just appealed to us, and I think we might have mentioned it to Bill, and it appealed to him. So Tiberius was a character he really liked, and we really liked. And so once Spectre came out, that's when we started thinking in terms of trilogies.
And that became a full trilogy. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, then we moved on to the Captain's ones. Yeah, and that was also a trilogy, but that one got interrupted slightly.
Yeah. We had lunch with Bill one day, and he was talking about things he'd been reading about the Civil War and the pressures on generals where they had to fire on their own troops to save a battle. And with the Shatnerverse novels, that was the key, that there would be, the germ of an idea there, like decisions that had to be made during the Civil War. And he was interested in what the generals were thinking. And we said, well, okay, the Star Trek version of that is Romulus and Remus. That's a Civil War. We would bring in these elements of Star Trek.
Well, we could feel that they just fit together.
So I know we worked on an outline for a Romulus-Remus story with Kirk. Bill said, yeah, this is great, I like it. And we sent that into Pocket, and Pocket said, yeah, this is great, we love it. And they sent it into Paramount, and Paramount said, no, this is Nemesis, our next generation movie.
So it became our Nemesis.
Yes. And then once we had all seen Nemesis and figured out where the situation was, then we continued with Captain's Blood
and
then Captain's Glory. So after Captain's Glory, the feeling was, yeah, let's keep going. These are doing great. We had a conversation with Bill, and he said he wanted to do something about child soldiers. He was appalled. Bill does a lot of charity work. He helps a lot of kids all over the world. And we talked about child soldiers and what an awful situation that is. In keeping things with Star Trek, young Jim Kirk's experience with Kodos the Executioner. Why don't we tell that story? Because everybody looks at Jim Kirk as, oh yeah, he was born to be a starship captain.
But this was more, how did he begin?
Yeah.
We had gone through all these books showing him at a later stage in life. Yeah. This put us back to his formation.
And key to us in starting a story like this is, there is no way Jim Kirk is going to go to Starfleet Academy. He doesn't want anything to do with Starfleet. He doesn't want to do anything involving space travel because as a 12-year-old kid, he went out there and he experienced the worst horror imaginable, and he is never going out there.
And the strongest stories for a character are things that have shaped them in their past and come to haunt their present.
We mapped out a trilogy showing how Kirk and Spock first met, didn't become friends. That was much later. The first Academy book, Collision Course, came out. It was one we really liked and Bill really liked. And then they announced J.J. Abrams was going to do a Star Trek movie. Everything came to a screeching halt. J.J. Abrams has a very distinct vision of how his movies get merchandised. And the novels are merchandise. They're a licensed product that supports television, supports the movies. And so the Academy series just got cut off. Pocketbooks just stopped it.
But we had the next story.
Yes. The idea behind the Starfleet Academy novels with Kirk and Spock was to show how Kirk did indeed become the greatest starship captain. To do that, we had to tell the story of how he didn't want to go. He was hurt and scarred in his past, like Kodos the Executioner, wiping out colonists, saving the few. We had this plan where we would show how Kirk came around to the idea of Starfleet is a good thing for me. This is where I'm supposed to be. When I was 8 years old in Prime Directive, and my dad took me out to the cornfield and we were looking up the stars, and I said I wanted to go to all of them. And then that dream was crushed. This was all aimed at what was going to happen at Axanar. Because Axanar was at the heart of an unexplored Star Trek mystery. The original series episode, Whom Gods Destroy, established that Garth of Izar had achieved a great victory there.
But who or what did he defeat?
And why did Starfleet think the current crop of starship captains couldn't be trusted with a peace mission that would fall to untested cadets like Kirk?
So many questions, and in book 3, that's what we were going to find out.
Yes. And so in the first book, we have Kirk and Spock finally walking through the gates of Starfleet Academy. Maybe they'll see each other again, who knows? But that's how the first book ended. The second book then was going to be the Kirk's first meeting with a Klingon. It's an exchange program that Starfleet and the Klingon Empire had, sort of like Russia and the United States in the 50s. The son of an important Klingon admiral was an exchange student at Starfleet Academy, and we had a lovely thing at the U.S. Naval Academy on your first summer there. They say, okay, forget everything you've learned about computers and satellites and everything. We're putting you on a sailing ship, and you're going to have a sextant, and you're going to learn what it means to sail the sea. The second Academy novel, Kirk and his little team of friends and this Klingon, they were going to do it the old-fashioned way. They were going to fly from the Earth to the moon in a chemically powered rocket. Everything was going to break down, no computers, and they were going to have to fly it by hand, by sextant. But the presence of a Klingon on the grounds of Starfleet Academy, Kirk and his friends start noting, well, there are odd things going on. What's going on in that building? Strange. And what Kirk and his friends uncover is there's a secret program going on at Starfleet Academy connected with the Klingons. And then the further reveal is, well, no, that secret program is actually something that's channeling the best Academy students, midshipmen, to self-select themselves into this streaming program to be the best starship captains, because there's something going on that Starfleet has to accelerate the rate of training. They have to accelerate the quality of the people they're getting. And the last line of the second book was going to be, Axanar will not wait. And we never got around to writing the third outline. It was sort of a great sort of closing period that we had started out writing these Star Trek novels, gone through so many iterations of Star Trek. And then there we were on staff at Enterprise, actually adding to canon instead of simply responding to it.
And this was 9 years after the publication of that first Shatner book.
Of course, we would talk Star Trek with Bill, and Bill was curious about Enterprise in the second season, and we sat down and watched a couple episodes with him. I'm guessing, just thinking back, that there was some talk about...
There had to have been.
Yeah, would Bill like to be on Enterprise?
And that's why we were doing that.
Yeah, and he did ask. He said, well, okay, if I was to go on that show, what would it be like? And he said, and I don't want to be a hologram. I don't want it to be flashbacks. And that's where we said, well, remember Tiberius from Spectre. Tiberius? And he just loved the idea of playing Tiberius. We came up with a couple of stories that we said these would work. And then we got the call saying, would you, our agent called us one day and said, Manny Cotto called and asked, have you ever written a script? And we had. And we went in to meet with him and Brandon, and in the course of the conversation, when Manny was talking about what he wanted to do in the third season, or fourth season at this point, and he mentioned getting William Shatner, and we said, well, we just happened to have, and we had a couple of stories that would have brought William Shatner into Enterprise, and including the Tiberius story. There were discussions that went on between Paramount and Bill, and I don't know what level. Bill was doing Boston Legal at the time, and we did hear that Boston Legal was ready to step back Bill's schedule so he would have time to appear on Enterprise. But in the end, it was not to be. From working together as a writing team and working as, story producers, co-producers, where people bring stories to us, there is a spirit to writing. And with Bill, there is no cynicism about Captain Kirk. There's no cynicism about, well, I'm an actor, and of course they're going to love anything I do. No, this is a character that he has...
delves into it.
Yeah, it's a part of him. If we think of that very first time that Bill Shatner and Leonard Nimoy appeared as Kirk and Spock on screen, it's the two of them against each other. It's the two of them facing off. It is Leonard bringing out Captain Kirk. It is Bill bringing out Mr. Spock. There was conflict there, but there was respect, and that just, okay, let's go for 3 seasons now with those characters and then do a bunch of movies. Gene Roddenberry creates this Horatio Hornblower captain, and Bill inhabits this role and makes it his own, makes him sort of indistinguishable on screen from the character.
The way Captain Kirk was written was really terrific. All the things that you would never play anywhere else, I got to play in Star Trek. I really was immersed in Star Trek, its ideas. I did the best I could. It was a wonderful role. I loved it.
Bill told us, especially in television, when you're playing the character week after week after week, inevitably you're drawing on yourself for this character. And he said what he hoped was that Captain Kirk was the best of him. So he wasn't putting on a character, he was trying to say, this is what I aspire to be. That's what we responded to, and I'm sure that happened in our very first meeting with him, even when we're in awe by sitting in the room with Captain Kirk, that we're responding to the best of William Shatner, to this character that he has brought to life, and we were there with him 100%.